I just want to make a quick response to a few videos that have been made about education. I suppose specifically this would be aimed at Thuderf00t, or at least that's the video I've just finished watching, so it's the most clear in my mind. But I also watched Coughlin's video about education, and the original one by somebody called Pogobat, whose real name is Dan Brown, or at least he's listed as Dan Brown. Very interesting stuff. I should just declare an interest here. My job is in education. I work at a university and I've done for quite a number of years now, so I'm kind of speaking as an insider, so that yeah, it might be a conflict of interest in what I'm saying, so I might be biased to just signal that to start with. First off, just in terms of the Thuderf00t video, I might be reading between the lines here, I'm misinterpreting, but it sounds to me like what you, if you're watching this Thuderf00t, is up to is countering what you see as a kind of negative video on Dan Brown's part, that Dan Brown might be kind of leading the youth of the world, the youth of America astray by encouraging them not to go to college or to drop out of college, and your video comes across as a bit of a corrective to that. You know, singing the praises of college, or just pointing out the facts to do with employability in relation to getting a college degree, that kind of thing. And I can understand that, I can sympathise with that to a certain extent if that's your intention. I don't think I don't think your strategy is entirely good, and I think the way you present university life isn't entirely helpful. And I think I hate to say this, but I think Dan Brown has got some points, not great points, but I think some of the points he makes are valid. I've just made a couple of notes, see if I can just relate to this. I mean, the first thing to say about the Pogobat, the Dan Brown video, is he said that something, I can't remember the exact words he said, but it's something to the effect that college was getting in the way of his having an education, therefore he dropped out. Now that's obviously complete crap. It wouldn't be crap if he dropped out and then pursued a different kind of educational strategy. But that's not what he did, and and that's fine. He obviously discovered a way to make cash by making videos for YouTube and accumulating subscribers, and he's getting some money through that, through advertising, I guess. But that's not education. He's gone down the celebrity route, which is absolutely fine. But it's not that college life was getting in the way of his education, it was getting in the way of his other aspirations. And he may want to come back to education at some point in the future, and that's absolutely fine. But he's obviously incorrect in that. And just a note to that, actually, on the sides of that, really, he does, in his video, he does say that he may at some point in the future go back to education. But that's actually quite difficult. I mean, I left school at 16 myself and did a lot of different things, and eventually went to university when I was in my late 20s. And it was hard. It's really hard to go back to university when you've been doing other things. It's not as easy as that progression, going straight from school or just taking a year out and then going. It is hard to do other things first and then go back. So I'm not necessarily recommending it, and it's certainly not as easy as Pogobat suggested it was. Yeah, so that's just that really. But the thing that he did say, which I think you don't pick up enough here in your video, Thuderf00t, which is about this thing about the world is changing. If you don't change with it, the world will decide it doesn't need you anymore. I think he's absolutely right in that. And the kind of stereotyping that you give about kind of Google generation knowledge, which is that knowledge consists of facts, and I can understand why you would say that. He presents it like that as well. But the idea that because we've got Google at our fingertips, we don't need educators anymore, that's obviously wrong. It's wrong when he says it, but it's wrong when you repeat it. It isn't the existence of Google which makes universities need to function differently. It's the existence of all kinds of different social and technological changes. But Pogobat is right to say that the world is changing, and if educators and educational structures don't change with it, then the world will decide it doesn't need you anymore. I'm not sure it's quite as simple as that, but there is some truth in that, I think. I mean, I'm a professional educator, that's kind of what I do, that's where I earn my crust. And I can imagine a world that doesn't need professional educators anymore in the way that I'm a professional educator. And quite honestly, I would celebrate that. If there is other ways by which education can be achieved and validated and integrated into society and linked up and made part of employability and made part of the good life, and made part of enhancement, and made part of morality, and made part of all those things, I would absolutely celebrate that. And I look forward to being made redundant when that revolution comes about. I'm not holding my breath, I think I'll be fine, but yeah. Okay, I mean, just to stay with this thing about the world is changing and universities are changing with it and need to, and colleges are changing with it. I mean, I find it personally useful to think in terms of what a university is and how they originated. I mean, they originated back in like the 13th, 14th century universities. That's in Western Europe, certainly. And basically, you went to university because that's where the knowledge was. You know that, and I know there's still hangovers of that today, but when they first started, and really right up until almost the present day, that's exactly how it worked. You had to go to university, you had to go to Cambridge, you had to go to Oxford or Durham or Exeter or whatever the other old universities were. You had to go to those places because that's literally where the knowledge was. That's where the people were, the men were, who had the knowledge in their heads, and you had to sit at their feet and hear it. That's where the manuscripts were. This is before printing, don't forget. That's where the physical manuscripts were that someone had taken the time to inscribe with the knowledge. If you didn't go there, you couldn't get it. You know, there wasn't a public library, there wasn't television, there wasn't the Discovery Channel, there wasn't the internet, there wasn't any of that stuff. So you had to go to university because that's where the knowledge was. Also, that's where the knowledge community was, and this is really important, I think. Knowledge communities are terribly important, and this is where it breaks on that idea of just fact. Knowledge communities are places where, are groups, if you like, of individuals, where knowledge is practiced, because knowledge isn't a set of stale facts that just lives either on a screen or between the pages of a book. It's something you have to do. It's something that's constantly being practiced and rehearsed, and that might be through discussion, or it might be through physical practice, it might be through learning surgical techniques, or it might be reading surgical textbooks, or it might be to do with engineering, or it might be to do with philosophy, or whatever it may be. But it's practice, and those things are only practiced effectively in knowledge communities, and that's one of the other things that traditional universities provided, traditional colleges provided. It was where the knowledge was, and it's where the knowledge community hung out. It was also, of course, where research was carried out, so it was where new knowledge was made, because you need a backdrop of existing knowledge and a backdrop of an existing knowledge community in order to produce new knowledge. So, of course, research takes place in those places, and always has. And so, yeah, knowledge community, research. And the fourth thing is about bureaucracy. And I think this is often overlooked in terms of universities. Bureaucracy is usually thought of as a bad thing, it's a pejorative term. But bureaucracy in terms of knowledge management is really important, because it's bureaucracy that establishes values, that allows values to be communicated. And I'm talking about values of knowledge, because some knowledge is more applicable in certain situations than others. Some knowledge is more valuable than others. For example, new knowledge is usually more valuable than old knowledge, but it's not just as simple as that. And bureaucracy allows the values of this knowledge to be maintained. It allows standards to be met. It allows parity between different institutions to be maintained. It allows it allows research to be evaluated. So all those things to do with maintenance of knowledge, management of it, evaluation of it, the validation of it, the assessment of it, all that kind of bureaucratic paraphernalia is provided by colleges and universities. Okay, now those things are changing. Dan Brown is absolutely right there. And many universities know that, which is why things like the open courseware movement is in full swing right now. Most universities, well not most possibly, but certainly many universities now put at least some of their course content freely available online. And it's not quite, it isn't just facts on the page. A lot of them are much more sophisticated online courseware than that. There's a lot of videos, a lot of audio stuff you can take away, a lot of interactive stuff you can do. So a lot of the things like the open courseware are making distributing knowledge. So knowledge isn't necessarily located at one particular spot in place in space anymore. It's not inside a building. It's distributed. Universities are quite happily participating in that. Knowledge communities are also becoming more dispersed. YouTube is a fledgling knowledge community. Many people group together and talk about various things and exchange knowledge and keep knowledge practices alive for a while. and you know, it does get quite smart at times, let's face it. But also there are proprietary knowledge communities outside of YouTube, which are either attached to or either attached to universities or attached to private institutions, which are there specifically to create knowledge communities to allow knowledge to be practiced. And research goes on in other places apart from universities now. So, so those things are certainly distributed. And one of the major functions that universities provide right now is the bureaucracy. It is still the case, and this is something that Coughlin pointed out, that no matter how smart you are, it doesn't work to go to a potential employer and show them your YouTube videos. You pretty much have to have a diploma. And I think you yourself make that point, Thuderf00t.